Barron Trump entered the courtroom flanked by attorneys in tailored suits, the weight of his family name hanging like armor on his shoulders. He sat with a forced composure, eyes darting to the cameras positioned at the back of the hall. The legal strategy was simple: intimidate, overwhelm, and remind everyone of the dynasty that carried him here. But intimidation only works if the silence holds. And Jasmine Crockett was already sharpening her answer. Trump's father had once tried to brand her in public with a cruel insult.
A new person named Crockett. I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person.
That line hung over the courtroom like a ghost. Crockett didn't need to repeat it. The press already had it etched into memory, but she would twist its weight back against them before the day was done. The first motions were formalities, but the rhythm was clear. Barron's attorneys spoke in long, polished sentences about legacy, about reputation, about a young man wronged by media storms. Barron himself leaned into the microphone, borrowing his father's cadence, quoting him almost word for word.
A very tall son named Barron. Has anyone ever heard of him?
The gallery stirred. Some chuckled at the arrogance. Others whispered that the heir was imitating the patriarch. Crockett waited until they had exhausted themselves. Then she rose, eyes fixed on the bench, her voice deliberate and calm. She framed her argument not around insult, but around truth.
They are. But the reality is that we need to start speaking more truth if we are really going to get to the real power. And if we don't recognize the full history, then we are doomed to repeat it. And frankly, this is a guy that is trying to do everything.
The words were not a defense. They were an indictment. The room stiffened as she pivoted from his claims to the deeper rot of privilege. And then came the turn. Crockett called her witness, a former associate who had once worked quietly inside the Trump real estate machine. The courtroom buzzed, reporters leaning forward, fingers already on keyboards. Barron stiffened, trying to keep his posture neutral, but the flush on his cheeks betrayed him. 9 seconds after testimony began, the facade collapsed. The witness spoke clearly, cutting through the air with the kind of statement that ends arguments in an instant.
Other was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and helped his daddy in the family business. Housing discrimination, that is.
The line detonated in the silence. Every lawyer in the room knew what it meant. Privilege, scandal, and evidence wrapped into one unanswerable strike. Barron shifted in his seat, his lips tightening, fingers tapping against the desk. His attorneys objected furiously, voices colliding, but the judge let the record stand. The witness had not editorialized. They had simply stated fact, and fact weighs more than fury. Crockett pressed the advantage. She reminded the court that power without accountability is corruption, that silence in the face of abuse is complicity. Her cadence was steady, her posture unshaken. Reporters scribbled madly, the words 9 seconds already destined for tomorrow's headlines. The transformation was complete. What began as Barron's stage had become her theater. The contrast was striking. Barron's tailored suit and polished shoes were symbols of wealth inherited, not earned. Crockett's file of documents, worn at the edges from use, carried more weight than any cufflink or family crest. The jury saw it, the cameras captured it, and the public watching at home understood it. Behind the curtain, aides scrambled. Phones lit up with text messages. Kill hallway press. Stop live stream cuts. Donors whispered damage control strategies, but the headlines were already out of their reach. 9 seconds had undone weeks of preparation. Barron's attempt to mimic his father's bravado faltered. He tried to reclaim control, repeating phrases drilled into him, but each word fell flat. His father's old line echoed uselessly.
Stops right here and stops right now.
But nothing stopped. The tide had already turned. Crockett didn't need to gloat. She let the silence speak, let the contrast between arrogance and truth hang in the air. The courtroom became a mirror, reflecting the reality of privilege cracking under the weight of accountability. When the session adjourned, Barron was rushed out by aides, head down, lips pressed tight. Crockett remained at the bench, shoulders squared, her witness at her side. Cameras followed her as she walked toward the steps outside, the crowd of reporters surging. The sound of questions filled the air, but she answered with the same deliberate cadence that had carried the day. The story was already viral. Headlines would read, 9 seconds that destroyed Barron's case. Editorials would praise Crockett's composure, her witness's devastating truth, the reversal of power on display. The dynasty had dragged her into court, but the spectacle ended in collapse. And the final image, the one seared into memory, was simple. Barron's silence against Crockett's steady voice. A dynasty undone not by volume, but by 9 seconds of truth.